Hey everyone, welcome you all. In the today's video, we are going to discuss a few important entry questions from Selenium WebDriver. One is, so what is synchronization problem in automation? And the next question is, what are the different types of weights available in Selenium WebDriver? So here first we need to understand what is synchronization problem. So in every automation, almost everywhere we can see synchronization problem in automation. So let us try to understand what is synchronization problem. And sometimes when you have some automation script like this and you have written multiple lines of code and few lines of code is required some page or some element, and rest of the code is required some other page or some other element which is present in some other page. Let's say this is my page one and page two, and this is a one element and this is a second element. And when I try to execute your code, your your script execution is faster than your response of your application. Suppose you are trying to load your page and through your script, and script is executing very faster. By the time your element or your pages will not be available. So in those cases, your code or particular statement will throw some exception. And this is the problem of synchronization. So what is the synchronization problem is, there will not be any balance between your automation script and your application. So most of the times your automation script will be faster than your application response. So that's the reason your automation script will definitely will fail sometimes, because the element will not be available by the time or particular page will not be available by the time. So this is a synchronization problem. So to solve this problem, we have multiple types of weights available in Selenium. So now let us see how to use those weight statements. So first of all, what are the weight statements are available? So especially in Selenium, we have a three weights are there: implicit weight, explicit weight, and fluent weight. And we also have thread.sleep. This is actually belongs to Java, and which will pass your code for some times. Whenever you write this statement in your automation script, which will pass your code for some time, depends upon how many milliseconds you mentioned here, and it will wait or it will pass your script for some time and then will continue the rest of the code. And this is purely belongs to Java. But especially Selenium WebDriver is providing three different weights: implicit weight, explicit weight, and fluent weight. So by using these weight statement, we can solve the synchronization problem. So now we'll discuss one by one. So when I say implicit weight, so how we can use this implicit weight? So if we want to use implicit weight, the syntax will be like this. So first we need to use a driver instance dot. There is a method called manage dot. Inside this we have another method called timeouts, and here inside this we have a method called implicitly wait. Implicitly wait is a method, and here we have to specify the time. And this particular statement we can add after creation of the driver instance, so that this particular implicit wait is applicable for all the elements in your script. Okay, so this implicit wait is applicable for all the elements in your script because it is a global wait. We can simply say which is a global wait and which is applicable for all the elements. Until unless you close the driver or you quit the driver, this implicit wait extents will not be killed. So this implicit wait is applicable for all the elements in your page. So implicit wait we can insert only once at the beginning of the code. As soon as you create the driver instance, immediately you can add implicit wait, so that will applicable for rest of the elements throughout the code. Now I'll show you one example how we can use this implicit wait. Let's go to Eclipse, and this is my Maven project which is already created. And in the pom.xml, I already added WebDriver Manager and Selenium Java dependencies, and I'm currently using Selenium Java 4 beta version. Now let me close it. Now let's create a new class in my package. Okay, under my package, I'm just creating a new class. I'll name it as implicit wait example. Implicit wait example. Let's take a main method and say finish. Here I'm trying to write a small piece of code to demonstrate implicit wait, how we can use that. But before that, we need to set the driver, and we need to create the driver instance. So for that, I'm just adding WebDriver Manager dot Chrome driver dot setup. Just import this WebDriver Manager, then import this WebDriver instance, and then import this Chrome driver. All right, so once we have done this, now let's try to launch our applications. So what I'm going to do here is I'm trying to launch my web page, and in the Google search, first I'll try to open my google.com. And as soon as I got the search engine page, and here I'm searching for something called Selenium. As soon as I search something, when I press enter key, which will display multiple links here. So in these links, I want to select one of the main link called Selenium WebDriver. And if I just look at here, as soon as you do search here, as soon as you are searching for something like enter, which will take some time to get the data from the server. So here there are chances to get a synchronization issue, because which will fetch the data or pages from the web server and then return into the web page. So as soon as we send the request from here from search engine, it takes some time to get the information on the page. So there are some chances here to get the synchronization problem. So what we can do is we can use implicit wait here. So let us try to automate the code. So let me just try to launch my browser. I say driver.get, and here I can pass the URL of application. And once you pass URL application, I try to maximize the page also. I'll say driver.manage.window.maximize. Okay. So now here I'm trying to add implicit wait. So implicit wait always will be added after creation of the driver instance, so that implicit wait is applicable for throughout the script. For all the elements, there will be one implicit wait statement we can add only single time. So by default, the time is 0. So then we have to add some time, wait time in the implicit wait. Now let me show you how we can add it. So let me just first create the implicit wait statement. I say implicit wait. How to add implicit statement here is, I say driver dot manage dot timeouts dot implicitly wait. So this is a method, timeouts dot implicitly wait. And here we have to use something called duration class dot, and you can specify time in seconds, milliseconds, or minutes, whatever. So for that I'm using this method called off seconds, and here I can pass 10 seconds maximum timeout I'm specifying. So this is a single and simple statement we can add for implicit wait. So as soon as added implicit wait, then onwards you can continue writing the code. So wherever the synchronization problem is occurred, this implicit wait automatically take care. Now what I will do is, let's go back and inspect this Google search engine search box, and there is a name available called queue. So I'm trying to identify that element. I say driver.find element by.id, and this is basically name, not ID. So I'm just taking name and provide the name here, and then here I'm passing some value. Let us say I'm passing something called a Selenium is my search string. So on the same element, I want to perform the mouse press action. So mouse enter action. So for that, again, I'm using send keys, and here we can use something called keys dot return. So when I use keys class, we can press any key from your keyboard. So you can look at here. These are all multiple keys which are available on your keyboard. So we can take one thing called return, which is basically an enter key. I selecting a return. So as soon as you provide some text here, immediately I'm pressing enter key on the same search box, so that it will go to the next page and will fetch the data and display the data like this. As soon as you press enter, which will go to the next page, and now here you can see. So on this particular page, my requirement is I just want to click on the link wherever I can find Selenium WebDriver in the whole page. And you may not expect the same thing in the first place. So sometimes it may be in the second place or third place. So I just want to click on this Selenium WebDriver wherever it is displayed on my web page. So for that, we need to write one small dynamic XPath. Suppose if I just look at the inspect and go to selector hub, and it is generated some XPath here, H3 and normalized space equal to Selenium WebDriver. So we can still use it, because wherever the Selenium WebDriver is found in the whole page, which will go and highlight the element. Or else you can just write your own XPath. You can change. Let's say instead of H3, you can have H3 as a tag, and instead of normalized space, I can use a text also. All right, so I can use the text and equal to Selenium WebDriver. So this is also fine. So when I inspect this element, now one element is matching. So let us capture this XPath and try to find the element. I say driver.find element by.xpath and specify that XPath and dot click. So this is actual action I'm doing here. So sometimes what happens is, so let me just run the script for now. So when I run this script, so observe what will happen. Sometimes the synchronization may occur or may not occur, depends upon the speed of your application. And let's try. So I have opened the google.com and searching for resting, and immediately it is giving the page. So my script is executing successfully. So I didn't get any synchronization problem here. So in some cases, if you have any server issues or if a page is loading very slowly or element is not getting faster, so then you can add synchronization problem. So you can add wait statement. So here I already added implicit wait statement. So whenever you added this implicit wait statement, this will automatically take care wherever the synchronization problem occurs. Okay. So what is an advantage of implicit wait is it is very simple to use, and we can add implicit wait only once. And the maximum timeout is 10 seconds. If the element is not available within the 10 seconds, or suppose the element loading is taking more than 10 seconds, again there are chances to get an exception. So implicit wait advantages. Now what is the disadvantage of implicit wait is, again this is a static hardcore time here. So if the element is taking more than 10 seconds, still there is a chance of getting a exception. And advantages, we can add only once, and which is applicable for all the elements. So this is simple implicit wait statement. Now let us move on to the next one, explicit statement. How to work with the explicit wait statement. So explicit wait statement is a basically element specific. So we can wait for that element. And here we need to additionally specify some condition also. Along with the time, we need to also specify certain condition. It will wait till certain condition is matched. So that is explicit wait statement. So now we'll see how we can work with the explicit wait statement. So to use the explicit wait statement, we have a special class called WebDriver wait class. So let me show you the syntax, how to use explicit wait. So first you need to create an object of WebDriver wait and a new WebDriver wait. And here we have to pass driver instance and maximum timeout, how much time you want to wait. And once you define the WebDriver wait, then we have to use this object. Let's say this is my wait, and this reference variable we have to use to add explicit wait. So for example, I have an element or I have a link. So I will wait for that particular link, which is located on the web page or which is present on the web page. That's my condition. So for that, what I can do is take this WebDriver wait reference variable here and use one method called until. And expected conditions is a predefined class in Selenium. Inside this, we have a conditional methods. So there are so many conditional methods are available. So visibility of element located, element to be clickable, element is present. So there are multiple conditional methods are available. You can choose one of the method, whichever appropriate in your scenario. And here we have to pass the locator. And then how this is going to work. So here I say by dot link text something. So this is actually locator. Now this particular method will try to find the element by using this locator. Suppose it is able to find the element, then this condition becomes true, and then element will be returned and store that element here in this variable. So here multiple things are involved. It will check the condition, and when the condition will be matched, if the element is available or if the element is located, then the condition will become match. And once the condition is matched, it returns true, and then store that it returns true, and then the element will be stored in this variable. And once you get the element, we can perform the click action. So there are many conditions are here. I'll show you. So this is a basic syntax of explicit wait. Now here for one element, we put the whole condition, right? Similarly, for every element, we have to add this type of condition, and then we perform the action on this element. So we have to add explicit wait multiple times because this is element specific. So some one wait for one element we may not work for another element. So we need to add explicit wait for multiple elements. So we can also write one generic method which is common for multiple elements also. I'll show you that. So first let us see one basic example how to use explicit wait statement. So for that, I'm just creating one more class. I'll try to copy the same example. This time I'm trying to use explicit wait example. I'll make it as a 1. So okay, and explicit wait example 1. So in the same script, what I'm trying to do here is I can just replace implicit weight with the explicit weight. Okay, so for that what you can do is I can simply say I remove this implicit weight first. Okay, and what we have to do now is, as per the syntax, we need to create WebDriver weight object. So WebDriver weight my weight equal to new WebDriver weight. So this driver instance we have to pass, and we also should import this WebDriver weight from org.apache.qa. So new WebDriver weight. So WebDriver weight my weight equal to new WebDriver weight. And if I just look at here, I'm passing two arguments, a driver and a time, right? So in Selenium 4 the syntax is slightly different. So instead of passing the time directly, we have to use something called duration class. Duration dot, again in the implicit weight also we have seen the same thing. So dot, if you want to pass the seconds, you can say off, and days, hours, milliseconds, minutes, nanosecond, multiple options are available. You can just take uh, milliseconds, off seconds. So duration dot off seconds, I can just a maximum 10 seconds. So first we need to create an instance of WebDriver wait, the first step. Now we have to use this WebDriver wait instance to put certain condition on the element. Okay, so for that what I will do is I will identify the search box here, passing the value, then press enter. As soon as you press enter and we are looking for this element here, and then perform the click action. Sometimes this element may not be present immediately, so I will add explicit weight, or I will apply explicit weight on this particular element. That is a link which will display on the next page. So for that what you have to do is here, let me just, yeah, here after pressing enter, WebDriver weight we already created. So I'm trying to use this my weight dot, we put one condition called until, and here we have to put some condition. What is the condition? How we can add condition? We have a special class called expected conditions dot. So here you can see there are a lot of conditions are there. So when I say dot here, it will display a lot of conditions are there. So you can select one of the condition whichever is matching with your element or scenario. So here I'm selecting something called visibility of element. I'm just waiting for visibility. So visibility of element located I'm using. Visibility of element located. Visibility of element locator. So when I say visibility of element locator, we have to pass the locator. So this is actual locator. By.xpath is there, right? So this is actual locator which I am passing till here. So inside the double quotation, this one. All right, so I'm passing this locator. So now forget about this element, because explicit weight contains the finding of element mechanism, because we are already passing the locator. Okay, so this is required one more bracket. Okay, so now expected conditions dot visibility of element located, and then we pass the locator. So now how this statement is going to work? So first it will check this particular locator, or based on this locator whether it is available or not, it is able to locating the element or not. If it is able to locate, then this will return a condition, either true or false. If the element is located, then it returns true. If the element is not located, then return false. So always this particular condition will return either true or false. And if this condition is written true, then the whole statement will return the element. That element will be returned. If this condition is true, then this method will return the element. So that element you can store in the one more variable called web element. Suppose it is could not find this element, or it is could not find any element with this locator, then it becomes false, and then it doesn't return any element. Instead it will throw some exception. So take this element, and now I'm directly performing the click element dot click. That's it. So this is how we can add explicit wait statement. So similarly, we can also add like element to be clickable. There are so many methods are available. So you can use this particular method, whichever is appropriate for you. So this is how we can add explicit wait. As I said before, this is element specific. So because we can use this my wait for specific element. So tomorrow, if you want to add one more element, and you want to add the weight for that particular element, again you have to use a say mywait dot until, you can put one more condition and specify that locator of that element. And one more thing is, for example, if this condition is not matched, suppose this element itself is not available on the web page because of by bug or issue, whatever. But when this condition will become false, so it will wait maximum 10 seconds again, because at the time of declaring my WebDriver wait instance, we specified some time here. So it should exit at certain point of time, right? If the element is not at all available, it should not wait more than that time. So we have to specify some cutoff time here, so that it will exit as soon as the time is completed here. Then it will throw again some other exception or element not available or no such element exception like that. Okay. So this is how we can use explicit wait statement. Now let me run this code as a Java application. All right, so now it is searching for Selenium and going to the next page and clicking on the first link. Perfectly working fine. Suppose if I just look at this approach, so we have written the whole thing for one element. Suppose tomorrow I have one more element, again I need to write this one. Suppose I have a 10 element or 20 elements. The same thing we have to repeat for multiple elements. So anyway, we will change this locator, but still we have to write the same conditions or multiple conditions multiple times for multiple elements. So instead of writing so much of thing or so much of code, we can simply create one generic method which will applicable for all kinds of elements. And we will just pass the locator and driver to that method, and that method will wait for that element. And as soon as the element is available, it will return that element. So we can write one generic method instead of doing that. So now I'll show you how to write a generic method for explicit wait statement. So for that, if you have many elements in your application, then you want to use explicit wait for all those elements, then this approach is very, very useful. Now let me just create one more example, explicit wait example to the same code. I'm just trying to change something, like I just want to create one small generic method or reusable method. So instead of doing this, let's keep this main method one side, and then I will create here, I will create something called one more method. This is the generic method actually. Let me just go through what exactly this method will do. And this is a simple Java method which is created. So here I just name it as wait for element present. Wait for element present. And this method will take three arguments. One is the driver instance. The second parameter is the locator of the element and how much time it should wait. Timeout also we have to pass. So by taking these three arguments or parameters, internally it will create my wait WebDriver wait instance. So in the script, we no need to create it. So here it will internally create it. And here new WebDriver wait, and whatever driver we are passing here, it is using internally. And the timeout, how much timeout we specified here, we are passing the same timeout, it is created. And this locator used here. And wait dot until expected conditions dot presence of element located. This is another kind of condition, presence of element located. This is applicable for all kinds of elements. It is verified just the presence of element. So locator I'm passing. So whatever locator which is receiving here, the same locator using here. And suppose if this condition is true, and finally it returns the element. Driver dot find element, whatever the locator we pass with that locator, the find element method will find the element and finally return that element. Return the element. So this is the generic method which we can create. Now the same method we can call for multiple elements. So for example, let it keep here. So instead of writing this my wait and everything, I can remove here. So simply we can call that element. And here what we will do is we will just write the locator. We don't need to write this all the stuff. We can just remove this and we will write just a locator. Okay, so here this is the locator by.xpath we use, right? So this is just a locator. So if you want to store the locator in a variable, we use a by class instance. So here I'll say by element locator equal to and this one. So I'm just getting the locator of that element, and then what I will do is I will pass this locator to this particular method. So I have mentioned this is static method so that I can directly call this method from the main method. So now here this particular method will return a web element. So what are the argument we have to pass here? driver we have to pass, which we have already created, and a locator we have to pass. So this is a locator I'm passing, and how much time, integer value, let's say 10 seconds I'm passing. So now when I pass this way, when I pass these three arguments, one is a driver instance, element locator. This is the one. This is the one, element locator. So this is element locator and time. So when I call this method, immediately what happens is this will invoke this method and function, and which will wait for that element. If it is available within 10 seconds, then the element will be returned. So the returned element we can store in some variable here. So here I'm just creating one more variable, wait for element. So finally it is returning the element. Okay. So it is returning the element. So here wait for element present, it is returning the web element. So what we have to do is we have to store that element in some other variable, or we can directly perform the click action here. Okay, so we can store the element which is written by this function in some other variable. Then you can use click method along with the variable, or if you want to directly use click method, you can just call this method, and by passing three arguments which will return the web element, and that web element dot click action I can directly perform. So similarly, if you have any number of elements in your web page, or if you want to use explicit wait for those elements, you can just call this method by passing the arguments. And the same method you can use for multiple web elements. So this is a one more approach which will works effectively for multiple web elements. Now let's try to execute run as a Java application. And it started my Chrome driver. Now it is launching my application and performing the action. All right, so it went to the first page and trying to click on the first link. Perfect. So this is how we can use explicit wait statement. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of explicit wait? So the advantages, it is element specific, works based on certain condition. And the disadvantages is we have to use this explicit wait for multiple web elements. So we cannot use one explicit wait for multiple elements. So we need to write this condition for multiple elements, and people will feel some difficulty in it. Okay. So this is all about implicit wait and explicit wait. So now we'll talk about fluent wait. So this is almost similar to explicit wait. The difference is fluent wait will additionally provide something called polling and also exception handling. So these are two additional things which will be provided in the fluent wait. Now let us discuss what exactly fluent wait is. So fluent wait is basically also similar to WebDriver wait with more flexibility in polling time and ignoring exception. So in a previous type of waits, if there are any exceptions, suppose I say 10 seconds maximum timeout, if the element is not available within the 10 seconds, then we'll throw some exceptions. But there is no specific mechanism to handle those exceptions. And we have to write additionally try catch block, and then we have to handle that. But in the fluent wait, the exception is also a part of it. So it will provide additionally some polling time, and we can also ignore the exception if there are any exception. So what is a polling here means? Suppose in the fluent wait, we'll say 30 seconds is a maximum timeout, and I'll say polling time is 5 seconds. So what is a polling time here is our wait will go and check for the element every 5 seconds, the presence of whether the element is present or not. It will go and check that element for every 5 seconds. When I say 30 seconds maximum timeout, when I say polling time is 5, so total 6 times, 5, 6 or 30. So totally 6 times it will poll and to check the presence of the element. So that is basically called polling. So now we will see syntactically how we can work with the fluent wait. Now let me just create one example for fluent wait, then you can understand. Go back and let me take the same example again. This time I'll demonstrate the fluent wait. Say fluent wait example 1. All right, so now let me open the fluent wait. Okay, so now let me just remove this implicit wait. So this is actual code, and I'll also remove this one. Okay, so now I want to use fluent wait. So after clicking on the return, we will get the element. We have to click on the link. After searching of this, we got this link, and we have to click on this link. That's our goal. So let's see how we can use Fluent wait. So if I just look at the syntax which is given by Selenium, and accordingly we have to follow. Let me open this URL, and here they are talking about the weights. And in Java, and if you just come down, explicit wait they have explained, and then they have explained implicit wait also, then come to the Fluent wait. So this is the actual syntax we have to use, guys. Let us try to understand this syntax. Let me put it here. So the same syntax we have to follow. Let us see what is exactly the syntax means. So the first thing is we need to create one object of wait WebDriver, a new Fluent wait. It's actually Fluent wait instance. And with the timeout, polling every and ignoring is a methods, we have to pass time in seconds. So this actual timeout, maximum timeout, this is a polling time. And if there is any exception, so this will ignore those exceptions. This is a declaration part. Fluent wait declaration part. So now we need to wait for the element. For that, we have to use this particular syntax. So wait dot until, and in turn it will call the JavaScript function, and it will verify the particular element is present or not, whichever the locator we are passing here. And finally, if the condition is true, if the element is present, and then which will return the web element will be stored in this variable. And this is the return type variable, and on this variable we can apply the action. So this is a web element variable. So declaration part, and this is the usage. And just like a Fluent wait, just like a explicit wait, the Fluent wait also element specific. So we have to call this method and for multiple elements, and whichever element we want to use Fluent wait. Now I'll show you practically how we can do this. So here I'm just clicking on the return. The first part is a declaration part, I said, right? So copy this declaration and keep it that declaration as soon as you created the driver, because the same wait instance we will use for multiple elements. I call it as a my wait. Now import everything here, whatever we specified. So first we have to import this wait from org openqr selenium.support.ui, and then import this Fluent wait from org.openqr.selenium.support.ui. And then here duration dot of seconds, 30 seconds maximum timeout, and polling time is 5, and ignoring no such element exception, which we have to import from java.util. All right, so this is how we need to add declaration part, Fluent wait declaration part. Now after clicking on this return button, I want to wait for this element. So this is XPath which is created for that. Now I'll apply Fluent wait for that particular element. So how we can write? So now this is the actual XPath which we need to use to get that element. So now come to the implementation part. So copy this one, and here, so declaration we already done here, Fluent wait declaration. So this is a Fluent wait declaration is done. So now we are using the Fluent wait here. This is a usage of Fluent wait. All right, so this is the usage of Fluent wait. Now, so here, whatever the WebDriver we created, my wait, we have to use that instance dot until new function. So function we have to import from function we have to import. So here, put the cursor, and just a moment, save it. So function we have to import from commons.base. You can see here com.google.common.base, and then over. So this is a simple declaration, whatever they mentioned in their documentation, they have just copied here. And this will execute internally, and it will find the element. So here we have to specify the locator. So I'm using by.xpath, and this is the XPath we have to use to get the element, right? That element locator we have to pass. And finally, this particular code will return that element, and we store that element in this variable. I'll name it as an element. And once you get this element, and then I'll perform the click action here, element dot click. So this is how we need to use. So this particular piece of code we have to write for multiple elements in case if you want to use Fluent wait. Okay, so this is a declaration part, and this is a Fluent part. So the difference between explicit and Fluent wait is, in explicit we don't have a polling time, we don't have a ignoring exception. But in the Fluent Wait, these two mechanisms are implemented as part of Fluent Wait. Okay, so just we need to pass the locator whichever element you want to wait for, and that method will return the element, and then you can use that element, then perform the action. So this is how we need to use Fluent Wait. Now let us try to execute, run as a Java application. Now it is trying to execute. Yes, now performing the action. Perfect. Okay, so this is how we are going to use Fluent Wait. Again, here the problem is, if you have a one single element we are waiting for, this much of code we have to write. Suppose you have a multiple elements, again we have to write this code again and again multiple times. Only the locator will be changed, the rest of the things are same, right? So if you want to use Fluent Wait for multiple web elements, so then you can still write one generic function, and we can just pass some parameter to the generic function, and which will use Fluent Wait and wait for the element, and finally which will return the element. So now let me show you how we can write a generic function for Fluent Wait. Instead of using the same thing for multiple web elements, we can write one generic Fluent Wait function. I'm just trying to invoke the function for multiple web elements. So for that, what I can do is I can just copy the same example, and I'll try to use a generic function, Fluent Wait example 2. So now inside this, what are the changes I'll do is I can just remove this part, Fluent Wait declaration. I'm just removing it, and the just plain code I'm writing. And this is also same. This is a driver dot find element, and here I will also remove this part. Okay, I'm just writing the plain code. I don't have anything. It's a plain code I have written. Now let us see how we can write a generic Fluent Wait method, and how we can call that method multiple times. So for that, what we can do is I'm just writing a simple function as a static function. This is a function which we created. Now let me just read this function. What exactly which we'll do is, the function name is wait for element with a Fluent Wait. This is the name of the function, wait for element with a Fluent Wait. And this will take two arguments. One is a driver instance, and then locator. Okay, so by locator, so final is a variable, means what, the constant. Final is representing the constant, means that value of the locator is constant. That's the meaning of final. This is optional. Even if you don't put to final, no issues at all. And if I don't use a final, again here by dot locator, I'm just finding the locator, because we need to pass this locator from the actual code. Still we haven't passed here, so it is giving an error. So for now, just I'm putting the final here, just like this. Later you can just remove it. So this is a generic method I can create, and inside this I created this is a declaration part of Fluent Wait, and I put 30 seconds, 2 seconds duration is for polling time, and exception ignoring part. And this is the usage of Fluent Wait. And here I'll say web element equal to wait dot until, and WebDriver comma web element, and public element apply WebDriver driver, and return driver dot find element, and whatever locator we passed here, I'm just returning the I'm using that locator here to find the element, and finally this particular method will return that element. So when I return the element, the return type should be web element. Return type should be web element. So now let us call this method. This is a generic method. So whenever you want to use a Fluent Wait for multiple web elements, you can just call this method for one element. Suppose I have a 3 elements. So this method you have to call 3 times for each element. So how to invoke this method from the main method? So after clicking on this return, I just want to wait for the element whichever we are looking here. So I'm taking this X path of the element. Now observe this. So I'm just defining the locator here. I'll say by dot X path, and specify the X path of the element, and store this locator in a variable. I'll say element locator, and the type is by. The type of this variable is by. All right. So once you get this locator of the element, we have to just call this method, and we have to just pass it. So how to call this method here? This is a static method, so that we can directly call it. So driver instance we have to pass, Second one is a locator. So final is optional here. And just a, this is a by, right? That is a representing the locator. So when I pass direct element here, I no need to use final also here. I can say by dot location. Okay. Final is a simple, a constant value, which we cannot change later. So here element locator is just a by, and this is a type. The type of this variable is a by because we are storing the only locator part, not element. And this locator I'm passing inside the wait for element with Fluent wait. This is a generic function which we have created here. All right, so now I'm passing the element locator driver, and this particular method will receive the driver and this locator, element locator into locator. And then this particular code will be used. So this locator is by, and here it is using. Okay, so once you pass this locator, and this locator is using in some other inner function here, and that's the reason it is giving some error. So when you put the cursor here, it is saying cannot refer to the non-final local variable locator defined in enclosing scope. So as per the JavaScript, this is different block actually. So directly we cannot use this locator here. So that's the reason finally we have to change this modifier to the locator to final. So once you change it as a final, and then it will allow you. So here we no need to change, but here we have to change it. Okay, fine. So this is how we can just write a generic function for Fluent wait. In our actual automation code, we no need to declare any Fluent wait, and we no need to uh, use this Fluent wait directly. So we can just get the locator of the element and pass the locator along with the driver instance. That's it. So this method finally return the element if there is element present. If there is element is not present, then it will handle the exception also, because exception is also part of the Fluent wait. It will ignore the exception. Okay, so now let me execute it and see. And this approach will work effectively if you have more number of elements, and if you want to use Fluent wait for multiple elements. So Chrome driver is started successfully. The same code will execute as usual. So every time you may not get the same synchronization problem. So you may get, you may not get, but sometimes randomly, if your application is very slow or response is very slow, then you may have get some kind of synchronization issues. In that case, these wait statements works effectively. Okay, so this is all about Fluent wait. So we have discussed about three different waits: implicit wait, explicit wait, and then Fluent wait. So these are the three types of wait statements are provided by Selenium WebDriver. So very, very important question in interview. All right, so that's all for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. We will see in the next video.